She's built HR departments from the ground up, navigated global expansion with grit, and now she's redefining what it means to lead with empathy. Lauren Holmes is the kind of people leader who doesn't just talk culture, she honors it. In this episode, we unpack the messy, meaningful work of keeping the human in human resources, building bridges across borders, and creating workplaces where everyone's story matters. If you believe leadership is personal, this one's for you. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate, and I am so excited today to welcome a culture creator, Lauren Holmes, Director of Human Resources with a cultural preservation company. She's in studio today with us. Lauren, I am thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
I am as well. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are kicking things off. Lauren, I've had the pleasure and in our, what I like to say, our green room time, right? Outside of the audience, you've been able to share a bit of your why behind the work that you do. So before we get into strategy, structure, and the fun that we're going to have today with the audience, tell us why this work matters so deeply to you and what personal thread ties you to this human-centered leadership and cultural preservation.
Sure, yeah. So my why is really for the people, which I know we're in human resources and that's, supposed to be what it is. But sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. And I try really hard to make, the people the forefront of everything that I do. Every new change, every new policy that we make, every new benefit that we incorporate, that is my, driving force. And so I try to, foster that idea by being relational with my team, and the people that are, under me or beside me, peers, people who are above me, really just getting to know who the people are before we talk business, and really understanding, what drives them as an individual, what drives them as a leader. And I've found that ideation can really set you apart in the HR industry, and not to make myself, at a higher, place than any other HR professional, but just to encourage other leaders, when you go that extra mile, however, how long it may take, and disrupt your schedule and the calendar and the busyness of your work day, when you take that time to intentionally get to know the people and, even just the fun stuff, like what'd you make for dinner last night? So that's kind of my driving force and what I've seen to be effective. And also how I wish to receive my own, leadership, when it's being received on my own. And that's something that I have seen and I have reciprocated with my cultural preservation company that I'm at right now. Our founders are amazing. They are truly personable and really care about our team. And so, making that shift to a new industry recently within this year, the beginning of 2025, really, confirmed that I made the right decision, and that I transitioned somewhere that can really help foster that idea that I have and just make it, more and empower it.
And what a true reality, right? It sounds simple enough. I mean, it's human resources. And what you've done is you set the tone to say, let's camp out there in that human space. Before I can resource anyone, before I can be a resource to anyone, let's find that common ground of we're human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And finding out more about who that human is on the other side of the desk, like you said, shoulder to shoulder, at those that you are managing up to. I think that we take that, and you kind of spoke this out, for granted at times, that, well, of course that's what we're doing, but taking those points of pause to be intentional in that space. I love it. You're like, I'm not saying I'm doing this better than anyone else. What you're saying is, let's be excellent together in our industry, right? In this
Right.
space of leading out, in what it's supposed to be, being a resourceful space for the other human beings that we're working shoulder to shoulder with, for some great causes, some great missions, right? A lot of times we put mission only in this space of, in the nonprofit space, and that's not what we're saying here. We're talking about being human in a leadership space, that's moving forward. Yep, a for-profit organization, because that is what is going to be the driving fuel behind, and sustainable force behind anything that we're doing. So I appreciate that, as simple as that sounds, and maybe so kind of, well, of course that's what we do, we're not taking that for granted, and we're putting that back to the forefront with what you said. You have helped to build, getting a little bit into your career path, and the steps that you've taken, international HR departments from the ground up. What was one of the biggest misconceptions that you had going into that part of your journey?
That everyone's the same. That's all going to be like exactly how the U.S. is set up, which it's not. It's definitely not. With just like the first thing you think of is laws. Like, that's one thing, labor laws, but also how the people interact, like different cultures. You're experiencing different cultures globally. You have to be aware of their cultural norms. Maybe they respond to feedback differently culturally than someone in the USA. So things like that. Kind of going back to the human part of the human resources. Understanding the cultures behind your people. My husband
taking that time, right, to sit in that space.
Yeah. I have to give my husband credit for this liner, because he came up with it. But he said he helped me orchestrate, your company's culture is your people's culture, is your people's cultures. And so what that means is, you can come up and brainstorm and have like as many ideas as you want for your culture. And you can definitely help foster that, help initiate that process and what it looks like. But when it comes down to it, it's really your people, your people, sometimes you have good eggs, sometimes you have bad. And whenever you have those tougher personalities, you have to figure out how to get through to them to, really keep that culture healthy. And so I think that's not to say that I have encountered a lot of bad eggs, because I haven't, but just to say, your company's culture is your people's culture, where they come from, who they are, the religions that they believe, because that's really important to keep on the forefront of your mind, specifically when you're in HR, allowing them to have the opportunity and not feel, persecuted in some sense, looked down on for having to take time to pray if that's, a part of their religious custom, or observing certain holidays, whatever that may look like. And so I think with that question, not everyone's the same, but also not everyone's the same culturally. So you might have many different cultures that you have to be intentional about learning about who they are, what they believe.
And making sure that, that you see them, right? That's, right. I think we're talking about these unique spaces, and making sure that, yes, we said there's a level playing field of all of us being in the human space. And then we step right into, and each of those humans have their uniqueness that they bring to the table. And so we've got to see them there. And I appreciate that when we a lot of conversation around culture and company culture, and we
Mm-hmm.
create that. And as your husband helped you curate that, the individuals and the culture that they bring that together, help to formulate what that culture looks like. Right. So how do I bring my uniqueness into a space, and we do this together, and do it
Mm-hmm.
together well? Well, there's going to be conversation around that, right? There's going to be questions and being curious, as to why maybe someone interacts differently to what is spoken out as the company culture. And it may not be that they don't align with it, but it just may be that they don't understand, right?
Right.
And want to have some dialogue around that. So I really appreciate that space, because that's something, obviously, with the world that we're in, it's not just about this tiny part of the globe that we're on. It is, how are we interacting and engaging across all of those lines? Rapid growth, right? We talk about people. We are expanding as far as population all the time, but rapid growth teach you, what does that actually teach you about slowing down? We're moving so fast. You and I talked about this in the green room. There's time for pause, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's beauty in that. Share a moment when momentum and mission actually collided, and how did you navigate that tension?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because you you have to think about, like, you kind of have to think like businessy, like your business brain
Mm-hmm.
has to pop in the HR space, because HR is not only catering to the people, the employees, the team members, but they're also catering to the owners. You have to like find a balance of,
Mm-hmm.
this is where the company needs to go, but how do I maintain healthy morale and not change too much too quickly so that people don't feel disoriented, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Get dizzy in the process.
yeah. And a lot of people, change is one of the biggest fear factors for human beings, is change. And when you change a lot, then it gets to be a lot. And then people start to shut down, or,
Mm-hmm.
they're not as receptive, or, whatever that may be. So I think what I've found healthy is getting other people's input, the team's input, seeing what they feel they need the most. You're doing overtime. Okay, well, what type of position would be helpful to help you in this time, so that you're not doing overtime, so that you can still have a work-life balance, and sometimes that is hiring, another person. Sometimes it's delegating to another team member who's on the same team. So, looking into that and seeing, what's the right solution? Where's our budget? How are we doing with, our new hire spend? How much do we have allocated for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just hearing out the people, and also hearing out your executives. What do you feel like you want to do in this situation? Do you feel like you want to grow our team and bring on a new team member, or do you feel like you want to, make it work? And I've also, I'm a firm believer in lending a hand. Even if I'm in HR, I always tell them, you can teach me. If it's something that I can do, I'm more than happy to help you. And I have, not to my own horn, just to say, HR doesn't have to just be HR. It can also be, teach me how to assist a creative director, teach me what it looks like to make a good image on Amazon, or teach me how to do research in cultural preservation. What does that look like? And so really, lending that helping hand, I think can help. And you just have to like kind of feel the waters too in high seasons of growth. Sometimes you need to grow really fast in certain months. But you also have to be wise, so that way it doesn't get to be too much, and then you have to, adjust your team.
Well, I'm hearing this space of continuous conversation to make sure we're aligned. right? So that there is not necessarily one aspect of the organization, one team that's running out there, and not even that they're trying to run away with, but that they feel now that they've got to carry it all. That along the way, we're doing these checkpoints and, checking in and saying, hey, how can I help? Help me to understand so that I can support best, even from an HR standpoint, because obviously coming alongside a leader who needs to do a hire, that we think of, well, of course that's an HR space. Well, what about post that hire? And before someone is, coming in because there's a problem, what does that in between look like? And I'm hearing you say it's those places of like checking in, making sure that the alignment is still there and saying, hey, I'm here to support you along this journey. And that's where we can do the ebb and flow and that tension of we've got growth that's happening and we do need to pause before we maybe make that next decision. I love that. That's a beautiful portion of the story of growth. You've had emerging leader, right? So you are young in your space, but you've touched so many things. So there's places of looking back for you. What's something or a system or a mindset that you'd say this has been a part of? I want to continue to bring this forward and utilize this because I see the benefit and the beauty in it. And or I'm gonna let you pick something you're like, ooh, I would never do it that way again. that was not the hard. That was the harder joy, or not so much what was going to be sustainable, even if it did work for a time. So I'm gonna let you pick which one you want to look back on and say I'm bringing with me or I'm leaving behind.
Sure. Something I think bringing with me. Currently I'm back in a HR team of one. So it's a little bit different because I'm kind of reaching out to other team members to kind of fulfill this part. But I would say taking time out of my day to get to know people. In the previous industry I was in, I had a team of 9 HR professionals, amazing people. And we were very close as a team and just as coworkers. And I think what helped foster that was we had team calls twice a week. And the first 30 minutes of our calls, I let us talk about, or I encouraged us to talk about anything that they wanted to on a personal level. So how their family's doing, what recipes they're making this weekend, what they did with their time throughout the week, how their classes are going. A lot of them were college students still. Things like that, getting to know them on a personal level and showing that I actually, do care. And I think that not only helped our team culture just as an HR team, but it also helped build trust when there were times where, helpful teaching moments needed to happen. Maybe we could have done this way, and let's look at this way. And they were receptive to it. And I think that's what I would continue to bring in my career is, even though, my schedule was filled with meetings every single day, every hour, pretty much. I don't take that hour Monday and Friday for granted because it helped us, and we still talk once or twice a week. And then I think something that I learned of value to put on the forefront is boundaries, which I think is much easier said than done.
Oh yes.
Especially when, you're in a fast-paced culture, you're growing super fast, there's not a lot of manpower to execute the mission. You have to have boundaries or you're going to burn out. And I think I experienced that. I think that's something that I want to be more intentional, that I'm trying to be more intentional about, is putting those boundaries up after 5. If it's emergency, absolutely call me. But if it's not, then let's talk the next morning. And not, being just being available for like little things, you know what I mean? Because then it just gets to be too much.
Well, and then you're not bringing your best. You're not bringing your best self at that point.
Not bringing your best self, exactly. And I think that's also a hot topic is work-life balance. But how do we get to a point where we just stop talking about it and actually do it? You know, like how do we? And then it looks different for everyone, you know. And then if that's not possible, sometimes it's just truly not possible for the season that you're in with your company. You don't have enough people to work. There's deadlines, you know. Money has to be moved, accounts have to be observed, whatever that looks like. Then finding an outlet to de-stress, you know, taking 1 hour for me, it was swimming. It was swimming and going to the gym when I didn't have my team yet, and I didn't have my support system. It was just me. I was handling everything. And swimming was my outlet to help manage that stress. It wasn't always perfect. It didn't always do the job. But when I didn't swim and when I didn't put myself first or try to put myself first, I was a crazy mess. My husband was like, "You got to go swim. Get up."
Well, you've got to refill the cup. We know we can't pour from an empty cup. So making sure, and then you're walking out what those that you were leading, like it's not just they hear you say it, but they watch you do it. You're emulating and walking that out for them. You know, I'm going to push in on something that you said there as far as the work-life balance, because I'm a firm believer that we change the vocabulary, the narrative that changes our mindset, then that in turn will change action. And I think that's part of our challenge. We want to do healthy boundaries, not just boundaries, but healthy ones, right? What does that look like? Because we can put up some pretty high walls. It's really not work-life balance. We're trying to do this balancing act. It really is, how do we integrate? How do we have a healthy integrated life? Because there are all of these pieces that are moving. And when we do that, then it is, at some points, it's going to be less here and it's going to be more here. But each of these components are important, right? It's not check it at the door. Right. You've said that you're asking about what menu items and what are we doing for dinner, or what did the weekend look like, and saying, hey, this whole person who's showing up, and for yourself, you're who are showing up for the work. So I love, again, we continue to just build this narrative of what it really looks like to have healthy leadership, so that you can show up your best and be that best relational leader. How you can bring that high support and high challenge at the same time. You've walked into a lot of rooms with employees, new, established. What's your first practical move to really build connection when you walk into that space as human resources who's really leading the charge?
I always say at the forefront, the first few minutes, that I'm here for them, whatever that may look like. And I say, I know it'll take time. We have to build that trust, but as much as you feel comfortable, I'm here, whatever that looks like. And then I reference a LinkedIn post that I saw, and it says, the HR is like your 10 in 1. It's like your lawyer, your counselor, your advocate, and the list goes on. But to say, and then I preface, like, I can be what you need on a healthy level, an appropriate level, what you need in that season. However much you want to use me, that's what I'm here for. Human resources we're your resource, whatever that may look like. You need grief support. Okay, well, let me go find you a club that could help with that. You need to find, counselor to debrief your stress. Okay, well, let me find that for you, or, whatever that may look like. I feel like that's what HR is for. We're not just here to set policies and to make sure that everyone's following the rules and clocking in on time. We're here to be the resource for the people. And I think as soon as you lose sight of that, you've lost the trust. And that's what That's what it's all about. It's gaining the trust of your people so that you can foster a healthy organization.
I love
culture.
it. I love that you stepped into that space that I think it makes some leaders nervous, and that is building trust, and that's the core and the foundation of what is really going to bring about healthy culture in an organization and move mission forward. I think that there are some leaders who feel like when we start talking about trust, well, I'm not here to be their buddy or their friend, or will there be openings for taking advantage of? And those are all mindsets that are really, frankly, old and archaic. There is that, how can, as everyone who interacts and engage here at Cultivate, we talk a lot about relational leadership, and prioritizing the alignment through those authentic, accountable relationships. High challenge, high support. And I love that you brought that up. You stepped right into that. Where have you seen that greatest breakdown in human resources in again breaking down that trust, and what's your charge for your colleagues to rebuild trust in within organizations?
Yeah. I think the first time I was truly exposed to it was at a conference. Hearing someone else's story. I actually started out as an executive assistant before stepping into HR, with HR, being the final, where I wanted to land. But I was at this EA conference, executive assistant, and she said she was having some issues within her organization. She said, who do you go to when HR is not your safe place? They can't be trusted, or even in this case, HR was the problem.
Yeah. Well, what do you see? Like, you heard that, right? You're in that space, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, not that's me you're doing it, but that's me as far as a collective. If human resources isn't that safe space, as you've shared from that story, or they're the ones who are actually the problem, what's the responsibility of what you're doing today and your current colleagues that you're interacting and engaging with in the HR sector to help to make that change happen, to rebuild trust that may be broken down, unfortunately, within your own sector, but just with leadership? You are speaking into the leaders who are making decisions, right? You're speaking into management who are leading people. You say trust is important. How do you actually bring that into those conversations to not have it be an afterthought, but to have it be in the forefront? And there's no one size fit all with that. There is not a magic bullet that fits that. But when we think about trust, I think when I hear that word, what hits me is it's going to take time. This is not something that is a one and done magic pill. We really have to build that with a lot of the things that you've already pointed out in some cases, is knowing the person. How do they communicate? Like, knowing their communication style. And we all know, I'm going to trust when what you say you're going to do is what you do. When you say who you are, that's who shows up in the space. And so I appreciate that you put out there how important trust is in this space, not just a buzzword to throw around like we've got to be, trustworthy. Yes, but leadership has to show themselves trustworthy as well.
Right. And I think HR can help with that by initiating events outside of work too. And it doesn't even have to cost money. I mean, you can do online, like cook with the CEO, or things like that foster just humanness in the people.
Like, one of the times in my space that I felt I moved from working for a senior leader and working with was when there was an opportunity to have a brown bag lunch, to just sit down and have, right? We talk about being around the dining room table. We talk about the conversations that happen at the lunchroom table. And so when that leader brought himself into the space and said, hey, over our bag of chips and an apple and a sandwich, let's just have conversation. That really made a switch. So I love that when you said that, it sparked for me, Yeah, something as simple as let's have lunch together. Change that dynamic from I work for this person to I work with this person.
Right. And actually, when you're eating, your like guard kind of just naturally goes down, whether you
Yes.
realize
Yeah.
it or not. That and walking, I've found has been helpful. But yeah, something that I appreciated about my previous company was that every quarter we did an outing with all of our team members. And so we tried to foster, like the men were super close and the women were super close. And then we all came together for like a big team conference. And so, the men went on a big fishing trip, in one of the New Jersey beaches. And then the women went and saw a Broadway show. And I think, very opposite activities, but that helped, the men were able to see that the owners were, approachable and that they could, made them more willing to come to them. For the women, the women still come to me and talk whenever they need to. And I really appreciate that. And I think that kind of started when, I think they were happening a little bit before I got there, so I can't take that credit. But anyway, the point is that I think that's kind of where it started is, I'm Lauren first and HR second.
Well, and how do we bring that to the table again in a very authentic way, right? Because you are both of those things, and so who's showing up and coming into the space? How do those that you work side by side, those that you're leading, and those that are leading you, how do they see you? So no, I appreciate that picture that you painted. Crazy as it is, the time has just flown by, but I would be remiss. I got to ask you this last question before we have a little fun right here at the end. Again, I mentioned emerging leader. You've got a lot of career out ahead of you, but there's been some spaces that you've been in already in your career where you've got what I would say is like some everyday wisdom. What's the biggest misconception that you think that leaders live with and pass on to others? You're an emerging leader. You have people pouring into you, and you've got leaders that you're pouring into. What's something that you're like, you know what? We think this is the way and we're living with it. Let's not keep passing it on. What do you think that is?
So I had two answers for this, but I think I'm going to go with one that I'm most hesitant about because I think that's my true answer. Is that it's all about money with a business, and of course, that is absolutely a factor in owning a successful business. But you can't make your business happen without the people that make it happen. And I think as soon as you lose sight of that, again, you've lost, and if you keep that a norm, then, you're not gonna have a company left if all your people leave because they don't feel valued. And so I think that's, just a general, something that I've observed in the companies that I've been in, probably 5 companies that I've been in. And so I think that would be the thing that I would encourage is much as
Bottom line can't be the end all be all, right? Yeah.
It has to be about the people.
Who in turn have a drive at that point to move that bottom line, right? So it's not a mutually exclusive. Now, I think that's a great way to be able to wrap up our time today. And I love that and I appreciate how much everything for you came back around to who you say you are, and that is, human first, and bringing us back to that space of how important that is. Okay. I want the audience to, just before we wrap up, to be able to get a little more insight into Lauren with some things that I know are very important, such as, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, Rocky Road.
Ah, okay. You know what? That is the first time in a while that I have heard that one, and I think it's a tried and true. But I haven't heard someone bring that out, so I appreciate that. And then you mentioned, because I think it's important, and you've said it. Keeping that integration in our life and fulfilling ourselves, so we have something to pour out. You mentioned swimming. Is that still the case? What refills your cup when you're outside of the space of work?
It is. It is a part of my daily habit. And working out, just, weights just in general. Yeah. And playing with our puppy. We have a little baby boy, Winston. He's a golden retriever.
Cool.
He definitely takes over our life, but in a very good way. So swimming is definitely, I was a swim coach for probably 10 years or so. Swim lessons and swim team. And then I do that as just a form of exercise as well.
I love it. Well, thank you for some great reminders, Lauren. The insights that you've given, I mean, such depth to where and the passion that you have for people. And I mean, I think it speaks into why you are successful in the role that you are in, and the organizations that you have served and where you're currently serving, they are really blessed to have you. So thanks for living out loud that why that you shared with us right up front in the beginning, and for saying yes to being on the Cultivate Experience today.
Thank you.
Well, it has continued to, like I said, been a pleasure, as it always is, Cultivate collaborators, that we can be together, and remembering that even though we wrap up today, it's never a wrap when we recognize that each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. And so until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's make an impact and continue to be better together. Thanks so much. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivate, FOR good.com.